have known each other for now 20 years. Is that true?
Yes. My kids, well, they're now 36, 33, 32.
For over 50 years, fans have walked away from The Graduate believing they just watched a love story win. Benjamin gets the girl. The wedding is ruined. The couple escapes. Case closed. But Dustin Hoffman has revealed the real intention behind those final moments. And it's not what anyone assumed. There's a specific choice made in the last few seconds of the film that quietly undoes everything the ending seems to promise. Most people have never noticed it, but once you do, the story changes completely. The failure before the fame. When Dustin Hoffman was born on August 8, 1937, there were already a couple of clues that seemed to point him toward Hollywood long before he ever stepped onto a movie set. His father worked in the props department at Columbia Pictures, giving the family a direct connection to the film industry. Even his name carried a cinematic legacy. His parents named him after Dustin Farnham, one of the biggest silent film stars of his era. Still, none of that meant success would come easily. In fact, acting wasn't even Hoffman's first dream. His original plan was to become a doctor, and he enrolled at Santa Monica College with every intention of pursuing medicine. But somewhere along the way, that dream faded. The more he thought about it, the more he realized his real passion was somewhere else entirely. Instead of treating patients, he wanted to tell stories. So he made the bold decision to leave medicine behind and pursue acting. Excited about his new direction, Hoffman shared the news with his Aunt Pearl, hoping for encouragement. Instead, he got a dose of brutal honesty. She didn't believe he had any chance of making it. In her eyes, Hollywood only rewarded handsome leading men, and she simply didn't think her nephew fit that mold. For plenty of people, a comment like that would have been enough to end the dream before it even started. For Hoffman, it had the opposite effect. If he couldn't rely on movie star looks, then he decided he would have to outwork everyone else. He threw himself into learning the craft, investing every dollar he could spare into acting lessons, determined to become impossible to ignore. That journey led him to the Pasadena Playhouse, where he trained alongside some of the industry's most promising young actors. He also studied under the legendary Lee Strasberg, the pioneer of method acting, whose teachings helped shape stars like James Dean and Marilyn Monroe. It sounded like the perfect path to success. But once Hoffman arrived in New York City, reality hit hard. Finding work proved incredibly difficult. Money was always tight, and he shared an apartment with two other struggling actors. To anyone passing by, they probably looked like three young men chasing impossible dreams with little chance of success. History would tell a very different story. Those roommates were Gene Hackman and Robert Duvall, two men who would eventually become Academy Award winners alongside Hoffman himself. Even so, not every friendship came with encouragement. Hoffman had already spent years hearing that he wasn't handsome enough to become a movie star. Then Robert Duvall echoed those same doubts in particularly harsh fashion, joking that Hoffman looked like Barbra Streisand in drag. The remark stung. It reinforced the fear that had been following him ever since Aunt Pearl voiced her doubts. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe Hollywood simply wasn't interested in someone who looked like him. For a moment, giving up probably seemed like the easier option, but Hoffman refused to quit. After slowly building a reputation on stage, an unexpected opportunity finally arrived. Filmmaker Sidney W. Pink, best known for producing low-budget genre films and experimenting with early 3D movies, offered Hoffman the lead role in a slapstick comedy called Madigan's Millions, which was set to film in Europe. It wasn't exactly the glamorous Hollywood breakthrough most actors dreamed about. Hoffman had a difficult decision to make. He could continue chasing respect on the stage, or he could take a chance on a modest independent film that might never amount to anything. Ironically, the very thing people had told him would hold him back ended up landing him the job. The producers needed someone to play a government agent, but they specifically wanted someone who looked nothing like the polished, sophisticated image of James Bond. Hoffman was exactly what they were looking for. So he packed his bags and headed to Europe, hoping this would finally be the opportunity that changed his career. Instead, it became a disappointment. Madigan's Millions was shelved for several years, delaying its release and preventing it from becoming Hoffman's official film debut. That honor instead went to a much smaller part in the higher-budget comedy The Tiger Makes Out. Looking back, the movie hasn't aged particularly well. Its story centers on a man who decides that, rather than simply asking out the woman he likes, he'll kidnap her instead. For his work, Hoffman earned just $200 a week. If he wanted to build a real career, he needed bigger opportunities. One seemed to appear when he auditioned for rising director Mike Nichols, fresh off the success of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? Nichols genuinely liked Hoffman as an actor, but there was one major problem. The role was in a musical, and singing was not one of Hoffman's strengths. The audition fell apart, and another opportunity slipped through his fingers. Still, he kept working. He managed to land a small role in Mel Brooks's comedy classic, The Producers, continuing to build his resume one step at a time. Then, just when it seemed like he was destined to keep scraping by, the phone rang. The call on the other end would change the course of his life forever. The risk that rewrote Hollywood. The phone rang, and on the other end was Mike Nichols. Nichols had another project in mind, one completely different from the musical Hoffman had previously auditioned for. This time, it was a film called The Graduate. When Hoffman read the description of the lead character, he couldn't believe it. Benjamin Braddock was written as a tall, athletic, blonde, blue-eyed young man from a wealthy Boston family. Hoffman was the complete opposite. A short Jewish actor from Los Angeles, he was so convinced the offer had to be some kind of joke that he questioned Nichols about it. But Nichols wasn't joking. He wanted Hoffman for the role, and Hoffman wanted it just as badly. There was only one problem. Hoffman was already under contract to Mel Brooks after landing a part in The Producers. Walking away wasn't an option unless Brooks agreed to let him audition. Then fate stepped in. Anne Bancroft, who had been cast as Mrs. Robinson, happened to be Brooks' wife. Brooks already knew the story centered on an older woman seducing a much younger man. And after taking one look at Hoffman, he simply couldn't imagine him getting the part. Certain there was no real chance of success, he gave Hoffman permission to audition anyway. Suddenly, the opportunity was real. Now all Hoffman had to do was convince the filmmakers he belonged. His first meeting, however, couldn't have gone much worse. When he arrived to meet producer Joseph E. Levine, Levine mistakenly assumed Hoffman was there to wash the windows. Instead of correcting the misunderstanding, Hoffman played along and actually started cleaning them. It was about as awkward an introduction as an actor could have, and things were only about to get more difficult. Competition for Benjamin Braddock was fierce. Among the actors chasing the role was Robert Redford, one of Hollywood's fastest rising stars. Redford wanted the part badly, but there was one unexpected problem. He was simply too handsome. Benjamin was supposed to be a young man who felt awkward, insecure, and out of place. Nichols believed audiences would never buy Redford as someone who struggled socially because his good looks made confidence seem almost effortless. Ironically, the same ordinary appearance that had caused Hoffman so much heartbreak throughout his career suddenly became his greatest advantage. It was exactly what made him believable. The irony went even deeper. In Charles Webb's original novel, Benjamin Braddock wasn't written to resemble Hoffman at all. The character was described as a tall, attractive California wasp, much closer to someone like Robert Redford. Other major stars, including Steve McQueen and Warren Beatty, were also considered for the role. By every traditional Hollywood standard, Hoffman was the wrong choice. Even he believed it. Years later, he admitted he practically sabotaged his own audition, openly telling Nichols he didn't think he was right for the part. Nichols ignored every expectation and cast him anyway. That decision would end up changing Hollywood. Screenwriter Buck Henry later reflected that Hoffman transformed what audiences expected from leading men. For decades, studios believed male stars had to fit one narrow image of conventional good looks. Hoffman's success proved talent could matter more than appearance, opening doors for an entirely new generation of actors. Now came the hard part. He had to prove Nichols had made the right decision. During production, Hoffman quickly developed a reputation for throwing himself completely into every scene. While filming one emotional moment with Anne Bancroft, he unexpectedly grabbed her chest. Nichols burst into laughter, and Hoffman immediately broke character as well. Unable to stop laughing, he turned toward a wall and repeatedly bumped his head against it in an attempt to regain his composure. Nichols found the entire moment so genuine that he left it in the finished film. Years later, however, allegations of inappropriate behavior would cast a shadow over Hoffman's legacy, causing moments like this to be viewed through a very different lens. As filming continued, another battle unfolded behind the scenes. The studio wanted Hoffman to sign a 6-picture contract, the kind of deal that tied actors to long-term commitments with little creative freedom. Most struggling actors would have accepted without hesitation. Hoffman refused. He told his agent he would rather work for nothing than spend years making films he didn't want to make. Eventually, the studio backed down, but there was a catch. Without the long-term contract, they agreed to pay him only $17,000 for the entire production. Hoffman accepted the offer. At the time, it seemed like a fair sacrifice just to land the role of a lifetime. But when The Graduate became a massive hit, that modest paycheck suddenly looked painfully small. Despite starring in one of the biggest films of the year, Hoffman soon found himself collecting unemployment benefits while waiting for his next opportunity. Adding to the embarrassment, Madigan's Millions, the low-budget comedy he had filmed years earlier, was finally released, giving audiences an early look at a project he probably wished had stayed on the shelf. Even with The Graduate becoming a sensation, the criticism never fully stopped. Many people still couldn't get past Hoffman's appearance. One magazine cruelly joked that if his face were his fortune, he would spend his life in poverty. History would prove just how wrong that prediction was. The Graduate became one of the biggest box office successes of its time and turned Hoffman into an overnight star. Critics hailed him as part of a new generation of actors who looked and performed differently from the polished leading men Hollywood had traditionally celebrated. Buck Henry later argued that after Hoffman, audiences no longer expected movie stars to fit one perfect image. Talent had finally become enough. The sudden success surprised almost everyone. One of Hoffman's longtime friends even admitted he had been the last person anyone expected to make it in Hollywood. The surprises didn't stop there. Hoffman earned his first Academy Award nomination for Best Actor, while The Graduate continued drawing huge crowds around the world. Almost overnight, he became one of the industry's most sought-after performers. Yet despite all the praise, one thing continued to bother him. Some critics argued his performance owed more to Mike Nichols's direction than to Hoffman's own ability. Others dismissed it as a one-time success that he would never repeat. Hoffman became determined to prove them wrong. He wanted a role that couldn't possibly be mistaken for Benjamin Braddock. That opportunity arrived in the form of Midnight Cowboy. The role of Enrico Razzo Rizzo, a sickly street hustler barely surviving in New York City, couldn't have been more different from the clean-cut college graduate who had made him famous. It was exactly the challenge he had been searching for. To convince the filmmakers he was the right choice, Hoffman staged one of the most memorable auditions of his career. Instead of meeting the film executive inside an office, he arranged to meet on a street corner. When the executive arrived, Hoffman appeared to be nowhere in sight. The only person nearby was a ragged homeless man, aggressively asking strangers for spare change. After several minutes, the beggar walked over, dropped the act, and revealed himself as Dustin Hoffman. The executive had been fooled completely. The performance was so convincing that Hoffman was offered the role. Landing the part was only the beginning. Razzo Rizzo was one of the grittiest characters Hollywood had seen in years. Ironically, the same industry that once claimed Hoffman wasn't attractive enough to be a leading man now spent hours in makeup trying to make him look even worse. He even visited his dentist to have a custom mouthpiece created that made his teeth appear badly decayed. But Hoffman wasn't finished. Razzo's painful limp became one of the character's defining features, and Hoffman worried he might accidentally perform it differently from one take to the next. To keep it perfectly consistent, he placed sharp pebbles inside his shoe before filming. Every painful step forced him to limp the same way every single time. It was an agonizing method, but it worked. Hoffman had poured everything he had into the performance. Now all he could do was wait. At first, the outlook was grim. Early test screenings went badly, with audiences walking out during one particularly disturbing sequence. Then came another blow. The film received an X rating, a label that many associated with explicit adult films rather than serious dramas. For a moment, it looked as though Hoffman had followed one of Hollywood's biggest hits with a career-ending mistake. Then everything changed. Critics embraced Midnight Cowboy, and audiences soon followed. The film became a major commercial success, while its unforgettable dialogue entered movie history. The line, "I'm walking here, I'm walking here," became one of the American Film Institute's most celebrated movie quotes. And years later, the Library of Congress selected the film for preservation because of its cultural, historical, and artistic significance. Award season only confirmed its impact. Midnight Cowboy earned 7 Academy Award nominations, with both Dustin Hoffman and Jon Voight receiving Best Actor nominations. Although neither took home the acting prize, the film won Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Director, and the night's highest honor, Best Picture. By then, there was no longer any doubt. Dustin Hoffman wasn't simply the unexpected star of The Graduate. He had proven beyond question that he was one of the finest actors of his generation. With that achievement behind him, he was ready to tackle an entirely new challenge. This time, it would be as a romantic leading man, the dark side of genius. After the enormous success of Midnight Cowboy, Dustin Hoffman's career seemed to be on an unstoppable climb. But behind the scenes, his agent had a different concern. Hoffman had become so closely associated with the grim, desperate character of Ratso Rizzo that there was a real fear audiences would struggle to see him as anything else. The solution was simple: find him a romantic lead. That opportunity came with John and Mary, where Hoffman starred opposite Mia Farrow, who was fresh off the huge success of Rosemary's Baby. The film followed 2 strangers in New York City who spent a night together and tried to figure out whether there was something deeper between them. On paper, it looked promising. In reality, critics responded with little enthusiasm. The film landed with more of a shrug than a celebration, and Hoffman immediately realized he needed another role that would stretch him in a completely different direction. He found exactly that in 1970's Little Big Man. The film asked him to portray the same character over the course of more than a century, beginning as a 10-year-old boy and ending as a 121-year-old man. The makeup department performed miracles transforming his appearance, but Hoffman knew convincing audiences would require more than prosthetics. He needed to sound ancient. Determined to create the raspy voice of a man who had lived for more than a century, Hoffman locked himself in his dressing room and screamed continuously for nearly an hour, deliberately damaging his voice until it carried the rough, weathered sound he was after. It was another example of just how far he was willing to go for a performance. Later that same year, however, he found himself facing something far more frightening than any movie role. At the time, Hoffman and his wife, Ann Byrne, were living in New York City's Greenwich Village. Their neighbors happened to be members of the Weather Underground, a radical militant group. One day, a massive explosion tore through the building. Members of the group had accidentally detonated explosives they were preparing for a planned attack. Several people inside were killed. Hoffman and his family, living just next door, escaped unharmed. It was a terrifying reminder of how quickly life could change. After experiencing something like that, comedy must have seemed like a welcome escape. Not long afterward, Hoffman continued building an impressive run of films, including Papillon, before receiving an unusual script for a biographical drama about controversial stand-up comedian Lenny Bruce. His first reaction was immediate. He didn't like the screenplay, and he didn't believe he was the right actor for the role. The project seemed destined for the rejection pile. But before making his final decision, Hoffman picked up Bruce's autobiography. Everything changed. The more he read, the more he recognized pieces of himself in Bruce's personality, struggles, and insecurities. Even his wife pointed out the similarities. Suddenly, the role made perfect sense. Hoffman signed on after Al Pacino had already passed on the project, and the gamble paid off. His performance in Lenny earned him another Academy Award nomination for Best Actor, proving once again that he thrived when playing difficult, unconventional characters. By now, Hoffman had transformed himself into a troubled comedian. Next, he would become a man running for his life. For Marathon Man, released in 1976, Hoffman wanted every ounce of fear and exhaustion to feel genuine. Instead of simply pretending to be worn out, he deprived himself of sleep, allowing his body to become physically drained before filming. His legendary co-star, Laurence Olivier, watched Hoffman's exhausted appearance and delivered one of Hollywood's most famous pieces of advice, suggesting that acting would have been much easier. Over the years, that story became a symbol of the clash between method acting and more traditional approaches, but the reality was more complicated. Hoffman later admitted that his appearance during filming wasn't just the result of preparation for the role. Away from the cameras, he was battling depression, struggling through serious marital problems, and partying heavily. Much of the exhaustion audiences saw on screen reflected what he was living through in real life. Those personal struggles would soon spill into his next film. While his own marriage was falling apart, Hoffman began filming Kramer vs. Kramer, a story centered on a bitter divorce. The emotional parallels between the movie and his personal life were impossible to ignore. Unfortunately, the tension didn't stay confined to the script. Hoffman frequently clashed with his co-star, Meryl Streep, who was making her feature film debut. Years later, Streep recalled that Hoffman crossed physical boundaries during filming. In one scene, without warning, he slapped her across the face during a take. Looking back, she explained that actors often search for spontaneity, but there are limits that should never be crossed. She also expressed hope that behavior like that would no longer be accepted in the post-Me Too era. Hoffman himself later acknowledged that he had allowed his own emotions to influence the way he behaved on set. As his real-life marriage to Ann Byrne collapsed, he admitted that some of the anger and frustration he carried into work found its way into his interactions with Streep. The slap wasn't the only incident. During another scene, Hoffman unexpectedly smashed a wine glass against a wall without warning, startling Streep in the middle of the performance. She was furious. The difficult working relationship continued throughout production. At one point, Hoffman admitted that he hated Streep's guts, although he also respected her talent. Ironically, all of that real-life tension translated into extraordinary performances on screen. Kramer vs. Kramer became one of the biggest films of the year, earning 8 Academy Award nominations. Both Hoffman and Streep won Oscars for their performances. Professionally, it was a triumph. Personally, it marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Around the same time he accepted an Oscar for portraying a fictional divorce, Hoffman finalized his own divorce from Ann Byrne. Before long, he began a new relationship with Lisa Gottsagen, bringing a sense of stability back into his personal life. After so many emotionally draining roles, comedy sounded like the perfect change of pace. Of course, Hoffman approached comedy with the same level of commitment he brought to everything else. In Tootsie, he played a struggling actor who disguises himself as a woman in order to land a television role. To test whether the disguise was convincing, Hoffman dressed as his female character, Dorothy Michaels, and visited his daughter's school. No one recognized him. The experiment convinced him the transformation worked, and audiences agreed. Tootsie became another enormous success and earned Hoffman yet another Academy Award nomination. By now, it seemed as though he simply couldn't miss. Then came Ishtar. Hoffman and Warren Beatty agreed to star in the film partly as a favor to director Elaine May. The decision backfired spectacularly. The comedy became one of the biggest box office disappointments of the decade, with some critics even labeling it one of the worst films ever made. After such a public failure, Hoffman faced another career-defining opportunity. The following year, he starred opposite Tom Cruise in Rain Man, playing Raymond Babbitt, an autistic savant. Ironically, Hoffman wasn't convinced he was succeeding. During the early weeks of filming, he became so dissatisfied with his own performance that he seriously considered quitting. He even suggested replacing himself with Richard Dreyfuss. Fortunately, no one accepted that idea. Rain Man became both a critical and commercial triumph, earning Hoffman his second Academy Award for Best Actor. His next acclaimed performance would place him in an unexpectedly awkward position. In 1997, Hoffman teamed up with Robert De Niro for the political satire Wag the Dog, a story about a president attempting to distract the public from a political scandal. Then reality imitated fiction. Just 1 month after the film's release, the Clinton scandal dominated headlines across America. The timing couldn't have been stranger. Even before the film premiered, Hoffman, De Niro, and director Barry Levinson unexpectedly crossed paths with President Bill Clinton at a hotel. When Clinton casually asked what they were working on, no one felt comfortable explaining that they were making a movie about a president trying to bury a scandal. Hoffman later joked that he practically danced around the question to avoid answering it directly. By the end of the decade, there was little left for Hollywood to prove. In 1999, the American Film Institute honored Hoffman with its Lifetime Achievement Award, celebrating decades of unforgettable performances. It should have been one of the happiest moments of his career. Instead, it became one of the hardest. As clips from his greatest films played across the screen, Hoffman experienced a severe panic attack. Watching the highlights of his own career forced him to confront something he had carried for years. Despite all the awards and acclaim, part of him still believed he didn't deserve any of it. He later admitted that receiving the honor left him feeling deeply depressed rather than fulfilled. Unfortunately, even more difficult days were still ahead. Hoffman continued acting throughout the following decades, appearing in a number of well-received films, but major award nominations became increasingly rare. Then, in 2017, his legacy faced its greatest challenge. 7 women came forward with allegations of inappropriate behavior spanning several decades. The accusations ranged from sexually inappropriate comments and requests for foot massages to more serious allegations, including exposing himself to a minor and unwanted physical contact. The revelations cast a long shadow over his career. Hoffman issued a statement expressing respect for women and apologizing for any behavior that may have made someone feel uncomfortable while denying criminal wrongdoing. Some colleagues defended him. His Tootsie co-star Bill Murray described Hoffman as someone who had always been flirtatious and insisted he believed him to be a kind person. Even so, Hoffman largely stepped away from the spotlight, although he continued working, including voicing Master Shifu in the Kung Fu Panda films. Dustin Hoffman reveals what most The Graduate fans never figured out. At the center of The Graduate is Benjamin Braddock, played by Dustin Hoffman, a young man who looks like he has everything going for him. He has just graduated from college, moved back home right before his 21st birthday, and on paper, his future should be wide open. But beneath the surface, Benjamin is completely directionless. He drifts through each day with no real purpose, simply going through the motions. Those motions take a surprising turn when he begins an affair with an older family friend, the mysterious and seductive Mrs. Robinson, played by Anne Bancroft. From there, Benjamin slips even deeper into a life of aimlessness. He spends his days lounging around his hometown, floating in his parents' swimming pool, and carrying on a secret relationship with a married woman, all without giving much thought to where his life is headed. Everything changes, though, when he meets Mrs. Robinson's daughter, Elaine. Like Benjamin, Elaine is trying to figure out who she is and what kind of future she wants. The two connect in a way neither of them expected, but Benjamin's past with her mother changes everything. Mrs. Robinson is determined to keep them apart, setting off a chain of events that turns their relationship into something far more complicated. The Graduate is remembered for one of the most iconic and debated endings in film history. What begins as a messy affair slowly transforms into something that feels almost like a modern-day Romeo and Juliet story. Every parent involved is against Benjamin and Elaine being together. Even Elaine herself isn't entirely convinced, despite the feelings she clearly has for him. Once Benjamin's affair with Mrs. Robinson comes to light, everything falls apart. The two are forbidden from seeing each other, and Elaine is pressured into leaving college and marrying a man she barely knows. But being told he can't have her only makes Benjamin more determined. His feelings suddenly become crystal clear. So, in one desperate final attempt to stop the wedding, he jumps into his now famous Alfa Romeo and speeds toward the church. What follows has become one of the most parodied scenes in movie history. From The Simpsons and Family Guy to Archer and Wayne's World 2, countless films and television shows have recreated it. Benjamin storms into the wedding, causes complete chaos, fends off the groom, the parents, and even the congregation with a giant wooden cross, grabs Elaine, and the two race out of the church before climbing aboard a passing city bus. If the movie had ended right there, it would have been the perfect fairy tale finale. Benjamin would be the young man who followed his heart, took a huge leap of faith, and rescued the woman he loved from a future she didn't want. Elaine would have escaped a loveless marriage, and audiences could have walked away believing love had conquered everything. It would have been a classic Hollywood happy ending, even if it didn't quite match the film's cynical outlook. But then comes the moment that changes everything. Benjamin and Elaine settle into the back of the bus, leaving behind their families, their pasts, and the chaos they just created. Instead of cutting away, though, the camera stays with them. It lingers. The excitement begins to fade. They catch their breath, and those huge smiles that moments ago seemed filled with triumph slowly disappear. As Simon and Garfunkel's The Sound of Silence begins to play, their expressions shift from joy to uncertainty. It's a remarkable scene because the ending doesn't suddenly become bittersweet. Instead, the sweetness slowly drains away right in front of the audience. The longer the camera refuses to look away, the more Benjamin and Elaine seem to realize they have absolutely no idea what comes next. Those fading smiles leave viewers with one unavoidable question as the credits begin to roll. What do Benjamin and Elaine do now? When the adrenaline wears off, reality starts creeping in. They can't simply return home after humiliating both of their families in such a public way. They can't even go back to collect their belongings without facing painful confrontations. Benjamin has abandoned his car, hardly the smartest decision, and Elaine has walked away from college for a marriage that never happened. Returning to school without her family's support won't be easy. Neither of them has a job. Both have likely lost the safety net their wealthy families once provided, and the lives they took for granted have disappeared in a single afternoon. Before long, the question of what do we do now is bound to become the far more frightening realization of what have we done. But the true sadness of The Graduate's ending goes beyond the immediate consequences of one reckless decision. The deeper tragedy is that despite everything they believed they were escaping, Benjamin and Elaine end up repeating the very patterns that damaged their parents' lives. Mrs. Robinson's story is a perfect example. She became pregnant with Elaine before marriage and was pushed into a relationship that left her deeply unhappy. Much of her obsession with protecting Elaine comes from a desperate desire to keep her daughter from making similar mistakes, especially with the very man she herself became involved with. Elaine may not be pregnant, but she still makes an impulsive, life-changing decision with someone she barely knows. Benjamin's situation is just as revealing. At the beginning of the film, he has a college degree, but no ambition, no direction, and no real sense of independence. He spends most of the story relying on the comfort and security provided by his parents instead of building a life for himself. By the end, that safety net is completely gone, leaving him even more uncertain about his future than he was when the story began. The famous movie trope of interrupting a wedding has always been presented as one of the grandest romantic gestures imaginable. But when someone really stops to think about it, the idea raises all kinds of uncomfortable questions. For starters, it's the destruction of an event that likely took months, if not years, to plan and cost a small fortune. Beyond that, it's an attempt to tear apart a relationship that was supposedly strong enough to make it all the way to the altar. Even so, romantic comedies have continued to embrace the idea for decades. Whether it's Wedding Crashers, Four Weddings and a Funeral, or countless other films, the moment someone says, "Speak now or forever, hold your peace," audiences know chaos is coming. More often than not, the interruption is treated as the ultimate act of true love, and the person causing all the disruption usually ends up riding off into the sunset with the bride or groom of their dreams. The Graduate stands apart because it briefly pulls back the curtain. Instead of ending with a triumphant escape, it forces both its characters and its audience to sit with the consequences. For just a few unforgettable moments, it reminds everyone that happily ever after doesn't simply begin the moment the wedding is interrupted. Sometimes, that's when the hardest part of the story really starts.